We're throat, guys. We're throat. Turn this. Hey. Gotta remember how long it took you. First time. Yeah. See. It's not like once you make this song, right? So like,
Odell.
now we are done. I'm gonna tell all y'all. Appreciate it. Great. That's the last.
You got 5 minutes to improve, so if you need to go potty, stuff like that, you're Highlighting today. Highlights. Wednesday. Sorry, gentlemen, I got caught in an impromptu meeting. Let me ask you a question. Where's Mr. Odell? Is he? Oh, no, he's not. I just left her office. Just left her office. He's not with her. Anyway, I had talked to him about changing the clock a little bit. I don't know if he had the opportunity to do that. I want to pull that thing down today, and we need a new battery in there because it keeps lying to us about the time. So it does. So look, guys, this morning, ladies, you as well, y'all know the drill, the same thing. Make sure that you do your sign-in sheets. We need the HHSC sign-in sheet, and we need the TAP sign-in sheet. Make sure that I can read it. Yesterday, there was one person on the sign-in sheet over here. I have no idea who that person is. I got down to where I could read it and everything. And as far as I could understand the person's name and football. So yes, person's name is what? Or something like that. So look, if you can't read it, yeah, print it out there. In the United States, one thing, this comes from way back in the day. You cannot tell somebody how to do their signature. That's, you saw a lot of those old movies and stuff where people are making their mark. That's because you can't tell anybody how to sign. Whatever your signature is, that's what it is. But if people can't read it, and I need to be able to read it so that I can give you credit for that group. So I want to do that. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. And so just make sure that I can, I got yours, Mr. Grace. You did sign it twice, though, yesterday. You did. But, both times I could tell it was you. Yeah, so I appreciate that. But look, get your name on there, make sure, because you have to have a certain amount of hours in group to be in the program, and that is that comes from the state. That's not us. And so, we have to keep up with your hours and stuff. That's what the sign-in sheets are about. Because I go and I make the notes, and then I send it to them, and then I take it back here and put it in the book, so that if they want to come by here and say, hey, yeah, look, there's Mr. Wool's name right there. He signed in, and he was here that day. So please do that. Make sure that it's like that. I'm also, our air conditioning is a little weird here. Yesterday, a couple of folks showed me that air conditioning thing out there was making a weird noise. Weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was making a strange noise. Okay, so when something like that's making a strange noise, what do? Turn it off. Everybody stays. Yeah, we turned it off, or Tyler turned it off, hit the breaker, and it's still making. So I haven't had an opportunity to talk to Jay about that, but I'm interested. I'd like to know, how can it still be making that noise? That's some other stuff. It could be stuck, but without electricity coming to it, it still can't make the noise. Stuck or not, it had to have some juice going in there. It's impossible. That thing makes that noise because it's stuck and the electricity is trying to move it, and it's stuck, so it's not going to work. But without electricity going through it, it has no reason to make the noise. Maybe it was a squirrel that got caught in there. I don't know, but something anyway. Hopefully they get, because it feels a little warmer in here to me today.
The rooms are still cold.
Are they? Well, that's a good thing, because the AMA has said you need to, if you possibly can, to get the greatest benefit, because your brain does great things at night. But to get the benefit, it's better if you sleep in 64 to 68 degree weather. So that's a good thing. But in here it's a little warm, so it's going to get up into the 80s today. So that would make this room get a little bit warm. How are you guys finding the new group room situation? Is that all right? Yeah, good, because that is where we want to do group for process group, because this is an education group that we do, and everybody's welcome in an education group, because everybody needs to learn. So if somebody walks in off the street, it bugs the snot out of me, but if they do, then they're just learning something that they might be beneficial to them. But process is confidential. Process group, that's confidential. I don't want anybody walking into those groups. So now we have that. Now we have some good confidential. So you can say what you want to say. So we have our book. We're going to go over that really quickly. Look, today we're still in emotions, and so we're going to be talking a little bit about emotions. Yesterday, I'll talk a little bit about boundaries. That's not exactly in the emotions area, but it can be. Sometimes our emotions cause us to be too stoic, or they cause us to be too open. And so, we need to learn how to deal with that. And today we're going to continue our journey into why am I so angry and stuff like that. So hopefully today we'll finish that up and we can go on to something else on Thursday and Friday. But emotional health, yesterday, we talked about when we first come in, we are maybe in denial about we've even got emotions, or I'm not an emotional person or anything like that, but yes, we are. And then we get to a place where we have a little bit of acceptance of that fact. Somebody says, yes, you're an emotional person. And so we get a little bit of acceptance. You've been willing to listen to professionals, complete assessments, accepted some insight into your current emotional health. We all have, our emotional health is at different levels. Now, don't raise your hand, but some of us have some depressive issues. We do. I said, don't. But some of us have some anxiety in our lives. I will tell you this, that if I suffer from anything, it's anxiety. And my wife suffers from severe clinical anxiety. She has anxiety so bad that just going to a restaurant is anxiety producing for her. And she starts to have tremors because of the anxiety level. And she's on medications, and she takes them 3 or 4 times a day. And still, I can take her out after go to church on Sunday. We go to a restaurant, and she's having all of those tremors. That just happened in the last couple of years. She's a professional singer and all of this stuff, and it just took all that away from her. So it just kind of messed her whole life over. So we need to find some ways to deal with emotional issues other than denying them or tamping them down with whatever our drug is. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. Not a bunch, because it's not that kind of day, but we are going to do it. Today is action day. It means I've accepted the need for improvement. I need to get a little bit better. I don't need to be depressed all the time. I don't need that. I don't need to be anxious all the time. I don't need to be that way. I don't need to be too open. I don't need to be too closed. I need to be at a place where it is normal. But what is normal? Normal may be different in everybody's life. Normal may be different for you than it is for me. Right? We have a lady that I know, and they take her blood pressure, and it's very, very low. If my blood pressure was the same as her blood pressure, I'd probably be in the hospital. But her blood pressure is normally that. So when it gets to the level of mine where it's supposed to be, and she goes to the doctor, they tell her she's fine because her blood pressure is where it's supposed to be. But for her, that's high. So people are different physiologically, we're different, and emotionally, we're different. However, when we notice that we are depressed or anxious on that level that it messes with my everyday life, then something needs to be done. Something needs to be worked. I don't need to stay there. We'll talk about one thing. So we actively seeking help and willing to take suggestion. You're willing to take constructive action toward getting better, toward changing things in my life. If I believe that there's something that needs to change in my life, so does that necessarily mean that something needs to change in my life? Yeah. Yeah, because I've made the decision that needs to change in my life. And I have made that decision. There's some things in my life that need to change. I don't need to be using any kind of sugar, so I don't. That's changed in my life because, we're in the same boat. You don't either. I've made the decision that I don't need to be depressed. Right? I've made the decision back in the day that I don't need to respond in anger. I don't have to, so I don't need to, so I don't want to. So one of the things, and we're going to be teaching more about this going forward. There's a book that I have that I'm going to make available to everybody, and it's all about positive speaking, not positive thinking, because what I say, my positive self-talk changes my mind, and my thinking will become positive as well. But the Bible tells us that as a man thinketh, so he is. What I say out of my mouth becomes my reality. So we need to be positive people who are using positive self-talk. We need to be, when we're talking about ourselves, we need to be positive. When I came to work this morning, I prayed all the way to work, and I prayed about being a positive, confident, powerful spiritual man of God. That's who I am. I'm confident. I know what I can do. I'm a powerful man of God because He said so, and I'm positive. So if you're negative, I'm not going to receive that. I don't. Everything is horrible, terrible. That yeah, it is because that's what you keep saying. So start using the power of your mouth, start using the power of your tongue, and start using positive self-talk. That's part of, if it's in the book, so that's part of our deal here. As you talk about yourself, that's what your reality will become. So start saying what you want. I've had so many people tell me, well, I'm not going to lie about it. You're not lying about it. You're just espousing your goals for your own life, So start trying some of that. I'm hoping we're going to finish up our anger management thing today because we've been on that a little while, and I know if you get stuck on something, you get a little bit bored with it. But I want to share a couple of real quick things, and then we're going to get into looking at the next. We've got 5 more types of anger that I want us to talk about. But what is the normal IQ in the United States?
85.
85? That's a little low. What is it? It's 90 to 120. Most people are going to fall between 90 and 120. Are there people below that? Yes. Well, if you're, there's nothing wrong with being below that. You can be. So if there are people who are below that, there are also people who are above that. Y'all ever heard of Mensa? Now, Mensa is the organization for people who have a high IQ and they call themselves geniuses. So if there people have those high IQs, they can become a member of Mensa. So, uh, and I think I don't remember what it's 138 or something like that. Not really sure what your IQ has to be before you can be a member of Mensa. I will look it up. But what happens when you get angry? It does. When you get angry, your IQ will physically drop. This is one of the reasons that we keep telling people that it is imperative for us to be in control of our anger. You know, when I get angry, then it's just like being drunk. If you're drunk, your IQ goes nowhere because you're inebriated. You get high, it goes to the same place, and you'll do all sorts of things that you wouldn't normally do, or you'll do all sorts of people that you wouldn't normally do. That's why we have HIV classes, because when we get inebriated, we get high, we get something like that, we'll do, we'll go do sexual things that we wouldn't normally do, and sometimes we get some stuff that we wouldn't normally want to get. So that's why we talk about that here. But also, when we get angry, it will lower our IQ. How low will it lower it? It can lower it. Now look, it's different for different people. Some people can get totally crazy mad and it lower it by 20 points. Other people by 60 points. But the average is about 40 points. If you get really, really, really angry, then your IQ drops to about 40 points. If you will think about the last time you were really angry and the things that you did and the things that you said to your loved ones, you'll know those are things I never would have said if I wasn't angry. And that you said those things and you did those things because your IQ had lowered. Now here's the deal. If you lose 40 points and the normal IQ is 90 to 120, if you lose 40 points off of 90, what's your IQ? I'm at 70 and 80. All right, if you lose it off of 90, what is it? 50. If I lose 40 points off of my IQ, then if my IQ is 90, then my IQ now is 50. Right? If I lose 40 points off of 120, somebody said it, what is it? 80. Right, so it's 80. What is the level, the IQ level, that is retardation? 5. It's a little bit different than you think. At 70, the APA says that level is a place of mild retardation. So if we lose we lose 40 points off of our IQ, and our IQ is 90, then, or less than 90, then we are at a place of profound retardation. A 50 IQ is very, very low. And so, if we get to that level, we can do all sorts of things that we wouldn't normally do. But how about a guy or a lady whose IQ is 120 and they lose 40 points off that? Now they're at 80, but they are still above that retardation level. What does that mean? They're still, look, they're used to operating every day at 120. Now they're at 80. They may be above that retardation IQ level, but they're still operating at a much diminished IQ, and they're still going to wind up doing the junk that they would not normally do. So whatever your IQ is, and you lose 40 points off of that IQ, you're going to wind up doing stuff that you would never have thought that you would have ever done in your life. So this is why it's imperative. And I know, every time we teach anger management, we have people who do some pushback. No, when I need anger and I use anger for this and I do. No. Here's why it's imperative that I stay in control of my anger, because my anger can get me out of control. Because my IQ is a place where I cannot control my own actions. That's a real dangerous place for us to be. It's a dangerous place for us to be for several different reasons. The first thing is, if I can't control myself, I may hurt somebody else and feel justified in doing so while I'm in that anger state. But the other thing is, a lot of the time I get hurt myself. Because I'm going to tell you, what one of the things that most people are afraid of is someone who's angry. You're an angry person. You come into that room, you come into this room angry and chunking stuff around, screaming and cussing and stuff. Everybody here gets on the defense. Whatever your defense is, somebody's defense is running. That's not mine. Other people's defense is attacking. Other people's defense is being stoic, standing. That's mine. That's mine. If you come running at me, I'm not too old to run from you. And I'm not going to run at you because I don't, I'm not an aggressor. I don't do that. But I'm going to stand right here. And when you get there, then we'll have to talk. But that's, most of the people get shot, people get killed, people get all of that stuff is because they're in an anger episode and somebody's defending themselves. I saw a thing on Facebook the other day where this big guy jumps out of a van and there was a car that was following them. I think it was like a big Suburban or something that was following. He ran back to this other vehicle. There was a smaller guy that jumped off and ran after him like a little puppy dog, like sometimes they do. And he just went up there, the window was down, and he started punching in that window. And then you heard 3 shots, pat, pat, pat. And he stumbled back against the other car over there, grabbed his hand, and ran off down the road and fell over dead. So he was responding in anger. But the other person responded in defense and killed him. There's another one where a guy had parked in the wrong parking spot. He had parked in a handicap spot, and the guy went over, and his wife had parked there, and he was in the store. And the guy who was handicapped went over to tell her, you don't have a handicap placard. You shouldn't be in this handicap spot. And so the guy came out of the store, walked over. This guy was probably my size or smaller. This other guy was a big guy. And he walked over and pushed that guy down. And by the time that guy hit the ground, he had pulled his weapon, fired 1 shot, hit him right here in the chest. And the guy went and ran back in the store. And as he ran back in the store, his 5-year-old son ran behind him. And when Dad got into the store up to the counter, he fell over dead. He had been shot directly in the heart. So both of those guys responded to a situation in anger, lost their ability to control themselves. Somebody else controlled them with deadly force. So it's not, we need to keep our intellect over our emotions. If my intellect is over my emotions, I'm in control. When I allow my emotions to get over my intellect, then I have lost control, and things happen to me and happen to other people. Now here's, what is that? What did I look at? A teapot. See, man, look. I'm a artist. That's a teapot. So what happens to a teapot? Yeah, it heats up, right? And when you get angry, we can feel the heat rising. We get red in the face. We get other things happening to us. Our heart rate goes up, all sorts of things that cause us to know that the heat is actually building in our bodies. When we get into the fight or flight syndrome, then we can feel that going up. So what happens with this teapot is it builds that pressure up, and then this little thing over here it starts whistling. What does it mean when your teapot's whistling? The tea's done, it's hot in there. Yeah, it has built up some pressure, and that little thing that's whistling is a pressure release valve, and it lets the pressure off, right? So what happens when the pressure is let off? Anybody? What is it? It cools down a little bit. It stops screaming. It's okay. Everything's all right. But then it's still on the fire, so the pressure builds back up and it starts screaming again, right? This is why we don't teach venting anymore. What's the best way? If you're mad at somebody, what's the best way to vent? What's the best way to vent your anger if you're mad at somebody? What is it? Yeah. Best way to vent your anger, if you're angry at somebody, is beat that person down. Go over there, slap them around, punch them in the head. That will vent your anger, and your anger's gone. But that's not pro-social. It's not something that we can do. So we don't talk about venting anymore, because when you vent, you go out. We used to do the primal scream. We used to have couples who had anger issues go into a padded room with some of those Nerf things and just beat each other for 30 minutes. And then they'd go home and live with each other. But by the time they got home, they were arguing again, because venting does not do anything to deal with the issue. Whatever the issue is, it's still there. So you're going to continue to have that issue. So what we want to do now is go to the gist of the problem. We're going to find out why we're getting angry. So what we do is we turn the fire off. You turn the fire off up underneath a teapot. What does it do? It cools down. It just cools down. It's not going to have to vent again. It's not going to vent again, because there's nothing under there making it do all of those things, right? So it's not going to have to do that again. So we figured it out. So when somebody's angry and they get angry and they cause some stuff in their life and they cause some mess in other people's life, we don't need to just vent. We don't need to just yell and scream. We don't need to chunk rocks or anything like that. What we need to do is find out what's driving the anger and deal with that and get that out of there. Once we get that out of there, guess what? Not an angry person anymore. But do I still have the ability to be angry?
No.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing I've understood, I've come to learn, is my anger is mine. It's in my control. I can control it. I have so many people come to the little facility and say, "Hey, I can't control my own." Yes, you can. If you can't, we'll put you in an institution somewhere. You can control your own anger. It's a secondary emotion. It's better for us to know why we're getting angry and what type of anger that we're having to deal with. Because here's the person that deals with that anger is going to be you. You're the one. One of the things, if you're a chronically angry person, you're angry all of the time, you're not going to have a whole lot of people hang around you. I don't want to be around a person who's angry all the time. I don't want to do that. I lost my first girlfriend that way. I told her, I remember the day that she told me I could just hit the bricks. I told her, she said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I'm just mad." She said, "You're always mad. You are always angry. Every time I see you, you're mad. I don't need that in my life." And so she was gone, and so, okay. Yeah. So people don't want to be around somebody that's angry all the time. So it behooves me, knowing that I can get angry, knowing that I still have that capacity, but also knowing that, hey, look, it's up to me to control that. Because look, I'm going to tell you this: we can get away with bad behavior a long time, can't we? I want to tell you, I was inundated with bad behavior for years and years and years and years, until a guy that was about 3 times my size and had a gun and a badge said, "You're coming with me." And what did I tell that big guy? Now, what did you tell? No, you say what? You want to bet? I'm not going. And look, before it was over with, not only did I go with him, I had places on me that hurt. So okay, yeah. I got to the. I don't know if y'all know where it is, but in Anahuac, Texas, there used to be the jail used to be up over top of the courthouse. You know, you had to get on an elevator and go up in an elevator to the top of the courthouse. That big old guy took me in there and put me in the elevator, and then I saw him. He took his weapon off because he can't take it into the jail. He took his weapon off and put it in a thing over there, closed it up, and locked it. So, and then got in the elevator with me. I said, I got him now. Look, this guy, when I looked at him, tried to, I want to look him in the face, but I could see up to about his chest because he was like, yeah. And so I decided to try his on. He cleaned my clock in that elevator. By the time I got off the elevator, I'm gonna be good. Yeah. But I was a little bit drunk, probably a lot drunk, and I was angry. I had blown the transmission out of my 1968 Dodge Charger, and then this guy came out there and asked me one question when he pulled up. He said, "Who was driving?" I said, "I was driving my stinking car." He said, "Okay, get in my stinking car." So, all of that anger took me there where the alcohol didn't take me. Anger helped me get. So, we're going to look at a couple of more places. We looked yesterday, not yesterday, but the day before, we looked at passive-aggressive anger. And I don't know if we got that one done real well, but passive-aggressive anger is something we're going to hide. It's kind of hidden anger. We're going to try to keep it hidden, but it's still not a good thing. It's verbal, physical. It includes emotional, repression, and avoidance of conflict. We don't want to get into a conflict with anybody. I see a lot of people using this type of anger. They don't really want to get into some fisticuffs or anything like that with anybody, but they want to let them know how they feel, so they'll go and say something really nice, kind, good, and sweet, and then kick them in the shins. And so we need to just understand what are those needs that are deep down inside of me that I'm trying to take care of by doing those kinds of things. Now, this one, I told you we're going to go from good to bad to good to bad. This one is another one. It's kind of bad. This one can cause people to have some issues. It's retaliatory anger. So what does retaliatory mean? Yeah, I want to get back at you. You did something to me, and I want to get back at you. Now, if I slap somebody and they slap me, is that retaliatory? Yes, it is. But how about when somebody else in my office gets promoted, and I get angry at them, and I do something that maybe makes them look bad? That's retaliatory anger. I'm doing something. And look, here's the deal. They didn't do anything really nasty to me, but my feelings are hurt because I didn't get promoted. They got promoted. And so I want to, I'm going to take it out on them because, I'm going to retaliate on them in a way that it's not going to let them see that I'm angry at them so much that I'm retaliating. So let me ask you a question. Why do you think people are habitually late? You go into work, but you're always 5-10 minutes late. Why do you think people are late all the time? And people are late to group. They're always 5-10 minutes late to group. Why do you think that is?
Being unprepared.
Being unprepared. That's a good point. Ain't no Boy Scouts, right? Just not being prepared. What else? Procrastination. Yeah, I'm not ready. I do that some myself. I'm a pretty good procrastinator. I've got a lot of great plans that I just know are from God. This is something God would have me do, and I'm going to go and do it. And then, by the time I get there, it's 2 or 3 days too late, or I just don't ever do it. There's some things I've been planning to do for my whole life that I just haven't done it, but the plan is still there. So I'm a hyper procrastinator. One of the big things, and we don't usually see it or look at it or notice it, is that's a sign of hidden anger. And that's retaliatory anger. Because here's the deal. I'm mad at the world. I sometimes don't even know why I'm mad at the world, but I have this anger issue that's kind of down deep inside of me. And so I'm getting back at my employer who didn't do it. I'm getting back at my group who didn't do it. I'm getting back at the people that are in my life who did not do it by being late, by always causing a disruption, by coming in just a little bit behind schedule. So that's retaliatory anger. And it's, it can be aggra-stinking baiting because you look, and if you have, we don't have that problem here. Our staff always makes it on time. But I have been at a place where I have 4 or 5 staff members, and all of them make it on time. All of them are ready to go. All of them have things, and this one staff member is always 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late. This one lady was always about 15 minutes late. And I know I've told this story, but I only have 3 stories, so I have to retell them. And I went and talked to her about it, and she said, "Look, I have children. And, you don't understand. You have children, but you have a wife. I have children. I have to take care of them." Well, so okay. So she was coming to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. She was going from 6 to 3. So I said, "Look, we're going to help you out. What we're going to do is move your time to 7 to 4. And, that'll give you plenty of time to get those kids up." She said, "That'll work great, Doc." So we did that. We just moved her schedule. I was in charge of the schedule, so it wasn't a hard thing. So we just moved her there. And boy, for about 2, 3 weeks, she did great. She was right there on time, a little bit early sometimes. I thought, man, I'll fix this problem. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I fixed this problem. And then one day she was 15 minutes late. So what happened? Oh, I had a flat tire. Oh, that's understandable. So the next day she was 10, 15 minutes late. So what happened? She said, the school bus. What? And then the next day she was on time. She was on time. And she wasn't. And she wasn't. And before long, every day, 10, 15 minutes late. And I called her to my office and she said, "I just can't have it." So what did I do? I fired her. Yeah, I said, "Okay, you can't help it. I can. You're fired. You need to leave." And she did. But that was all about. It was not about anything that was going on in her life other than she had these hidden anger issues. And so sometimes, is it terrible that I had to let her go? Yeah, I hate to see anybody lose their job. I cannot stand somebody. I love my job. I love having something to do. I love being able to get away from my house and all of the stuff there. I love having a place to go every day that makes sense and is a good thing to do and all. I love all of that. But here's the deal. If you can't do, then you don't need to be. And so that needs to be addressed. And so that was addressed with her in that way. And she was also, look, we shared with her, this is why you're being released, and this is what we think your diagnosis is, and you need to get something done there. And I've had people, I've told that story a million times, and I've had people tell me, "Oh, why didn't y'all do that?" Which is not legal, not allowed. We can't do that. So she had to go somewhere else to get another counselor. So anyway, retaliatory anger is a common reaction and an instinctive response to being attacked or thinking we're being attacked. That old word, perceived. It looked like it to me. And one of the things I have learned down through my many, many, many years of being on this earth is that perception is everything. If I think you're attacking me, then in my mind and in my heart, you're attacking me. Right? So I've got to get to the place where, first off, I understand that not everybody is attacking me. I'm not that important. I'm not the center of the universe. Not everybody has to attack me. Not everybody that comes and tells me something. Not everybody that does something that's outside the norm is attacking me personally. Right? They're just not. They don't even, sometimes, and this kind of hurts your feelings too, they don't even know I exist. So that they can't be attacking me. They don't even know I'm here. So sometimes we can just think it can be influenced by a need for revenge after experiencing a perceived hurt, a thought hurt, thinking somebody said something, somebody did something. This is when we go back to, man, that went right out of my mind. Can't think of what it is. Come on, don't help me with that. Identity, arrested identity development. Y'all ever heard that term? Arrested identity development. That means my identity has stopped. My maturity level has stopped at some level, at some age. A lot of times it's when we have some traumatic event happen in our life. At other times it's when we've started using drugs. My identity stops right at that level. And that gets us to a place where I'm a 6 foot, 210 pound, 12-year-old boy or 12-year-old girl. And so I'm stuck at that. So I react to life and I react to other people and I react to situations the way a 10-year-old would, a 12-year-old would. I started drinking moonshine when I was 8. So, I was stuck at 8 years old. So, I was a pirate. And so I responded like, any 8-year-old would. And I would go crazy, chunk rocks at you, and, try to get you from behind, all sorts of things, because I had that arrested identity development situation going on. So what do you do if you have that? You go back to that age, you take a look at what happened then, and you forgive everybody that was involved in that, and you move forward, and that will help you to mature to the place where we are right now. I'm 72 years old. I got no business acting like an 8-year-old. So you can come say something nasty, ugly, and demeaning, all of that kind of stuff to me. I'm not going to respond in anger. I'm not 8 anymore. I'm not a pirate anymore. I have grown up. Now I'm Batman. That. So the kind of anger usually deliberately aimed at someone who hurt you and can be influenced by a need to gain control over that event or that person or something else. For example, think of some of people who in your life have become angry even though your every action was meant to help them. You're doing everything you can help that. You're doing everything you can to help that person, and yet they get angry at you. That's why a lot of police officers, when they go to a family thing, they got a lot of backup because they're going there trying to help. I know some of them are buttheads. That's in everything, but they're going there trying to help, and then the people there wind up killing them and stuff like that because they're angry. So these actions, they perceive the actions as being against them, and then they retaliate. When you go and tell somebody, look, I know you need help in this area. Let me help you in this area, and all of a sudden they're mad at you. They're not doing anything but trying to help. So they're mad at you now. Why are they mad at you? Because they suffer from retaliatory anger. It can be bad. They find themselves targeting their anger at specific people after feeling verbally or physically attacked when usually that's not true. Trouble. So, retaliatory anger can potentially increase discomfort, anger levels in relationships. I see that a bunch. I had a couple in my office not too long ago. She didn't like the fact that he didn't say much. He didn't like the fact that she wouldn't shut up. And so they were kind of retaliatory toward each other. Every time this one would do something, this other one would do something to, After about 2 years, they were still, when they left, they are no longer, I'm not meeting with them any longer. But when they left, they were in a little bit better shape. They were dealing with that anger and stuff a little bit better, but it can mess up a relationship quickly. If your wife or your husband says something that you don't like, you retaliate against them by doing something that you think may hurt their feelings or might do something, that's going to hurt physically or something like that. So here's how we do that. We need to identify what we're hoping to achieve through retaliating towards somebody. If I'm trying to fix the situation, I need to know what I'm doing. If I'm going to get angry, if I'm going to retaliate towards somebody, and look, we've already talked about the fact that yes, I do get angry. I do understand that I control my anger. I'm in charge of my anger. It's my choice to get angry. If I see something that I perceive as an injustice, I'm going to allow myself to get a little angry about that. And the first thing I do is not strike out at somebody else about it. I'm going to investigate. Because if it's something that I see that I think is an injustice, somebody doing some type of wrong to somebody else, I'm going to go investigate that. We've had a little bit of larceny going on here. That angers me. I don't like that. Don't steal my stuff. Don't steal my stuff. Don't steal anybody else's stuff. So when somebody tells me somebody's stolen my stuff, then there's an investigation. I'm looking. I'll find out. Try to find out what's happening. And we just don't. We don't truck that stuff, right? Look, it doesn't matter. That's mine. If I put that down there and that's mine, that's where that needs to stay because it's mine. So that's mine. Leave it alone. I'll come get it. Now let me tell you this and my wife beat up on me because the other day I was going home from here and I found a screwdriver on the side of the road up here. It's laying in the middle of the road. So I stopped to pick it up. It's a nice screwdriver. Okay. I would put it in the floorboard of my car. I'm coming home. I'm coming to work the next couple of days, and man, there was a really nice hammer, big old maul laying out there on the side of the road. I stopped and backed up about half a mile to pick that up. And I picked that thing up. It's like an 8-pound maul. I said, okay. So I put that in it. So I'm showing my wife a couple of days after, look what I found on the side of the road. And I said, you ever think about the people who lost them? Yes, absolutely. And if I knew who had lost them, I would give it back to them. But I don't know who lost them. So I'm going to take advantage of that, pick it up. But if I know that that I see you lay something down there, you can guarantee that's going to stay there. So, we need to know what type of satisfaction, discomfort that's going to come out of that of things. We need to, it's sometimes helpful for us to really distinguish why. We need to know the why of the attack. We need to know to normalize that fantasy. Just understand this type of mindfulness allows us to recognize the risk associated with this kind of anger and lead to some behavioral changes. If I'm retaliatory toward my mate, are they going to stay very long? Not unless they really like that. Most people are not going to stay in a situation like that for a long time. If you're doing something that's going to be nasty to me, then I'm not going to stay in that situation very long. So that causes some mess in our life. It's the same thing if you're doing retaliatory stuff at your work. Are they going to let you stay forever and ever and ever? No, at some point, I'm going to get tired of that. I'm going to ask you to take this job and shove it because you don't work here, right? That's going to happen. So we need to learn that if we're using retaliatory anger towards someone, we need to do something to get rid of that, take care of that, and not let that be something that's going to destroy relationships in our lives or even our own selves. The next thing we want to look at real quickly, and this is number 9, and it's called self-abusive anger. What does that sound like? That's anger that's going to hurt me personally, right? Self-abusive anger tends to be connected with shame. Have you ever done anything you were ashamed of? Yeah, I have. You know, one of the things, the big deal, one of the reasons we know that addiction is not a moral issue is because one of the biggest deals that happens to us when we get sober is guilt, shame, and remorse. Right? I'm guilty about all the junk that I've done. I'm not guilty about the fact that I have a disease, dude. I'm diabetic. I'm not guilty about being diabetic. I'm also not have any shame about being a diabetic. And I don't have a whole lot. I sometimes have a little remorse about being a diabetic because somebody had a birthday here not too long ago, and they had a big old cake, and Mr. Allen was over there cutting the cake up and all that kind of crud, and I couldn't get any of it. So, I have a little remorse about having diabetes, but the fact that I have an addiction, I don't have any guilt, shame, and remorse over the fact that I have that disease. But I do have guilt, shame, and remorse over the fact that there's some stuff I've done that I'm really, I do have some guilt over, and I do have some shame, lots of deep-seated shame over some of the things that I've done. And a lot of remorse. If I could go back, it'd be great. Watch that. Y'all know what the TV show is, the Orville? I've seen that. I watched one the other night where they were able to go back in time. Yeah, it's a really stupid show, really stupid. But they went back in time, and if I could go back in time, there's 10, 12, there's probably 30 things that I'd go back and do a little bit different. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go there. There's a lot of things. But I learned that you can't do it. Superman can, but he goes so fast around the earth that it causes him to go back in time. I can't go that fast. So self-abusive anger is a lot about shame. This type of anger seen in people experience a lot of low self-esteem. We all have self-esteem. If my self-esteem is here, it can cause us to have some of this self-abusive anger. I'm angry at me because I'm not as good as I think I ought to be. So if I have this self-abusive anger, I have this low self-esteem, one of the things I need to do is start working on my self-esteem. Or feelings of worthlessness. I want to tell you, I saw a picture the other day. This wasn't the other day, it's probably years and years and years. And there's this little guy, and his hair was all messed up and all dirty. He said underneath it, remember, God don't make no junk. So we are not worthless. God doesn't make any junk. Well, we are highly worthy. So you need to know. So our hopeless, self-abusive anger is commonly used to help cope with these feelings, even though it pushes people farther away. Self-abusive anger can affect both you. It can affect you both internally and externally. When we internalize negative feelings, we take them out on ourselves through self-harming behavior. A lot of this looks like using alcohol and drugs. Now, I will tell you, we're all brilliant guys here. We're all brilliant ladies over there. We know that whatever we've been putting in our body is not good for us. It's self-abuse for me to use alcohol. It's self-abuse for me to put cocaine or methamphetamines or cigarettes in my body. It's self-abuse for me to do that. So we know that it's not good. Sometimes we do it because we're angry at ourselves. We don't like who we are. We don't like our reality. So we use something that's going to change that reality for a little bitty moment. So it's not a good thing. On an external level, this may include lashing out, attacking others verbally or physically, and it's just not a good thing. So we manage it. The opposite of self-abuse is what? Self-care, self-compassion. And I have gotten a little deeper on that, and it's helping me to get away from the use of sugar. You look at that and say, why on earth am I doing that? I'm a diabetic. That is killing me. Why should I do that? Every time I use it, it makes me feel bad. So why am I doing all of that? Say it again? Well, it is addictive. It is addictive, but I'm also suffering from this self-abuse habit. Now, I know it's bad for me, so look, and you're right, it's addictive. If I eat one of those little kisses or something, one little piece of candy, I'm gonna wind up buying 4 or 5 of those. If you go over to Walmart, they have little pies for 92 cents a piece. Candy bars like $4, but those little pies are like 92 cents a piece. So you can buy 7, 8 of those, and just have a good time. And that's what I wind up doing. So that's really become self-abusive for me. Way to do it is have some self-compassion. Self-compassion refers to treating myself with kindness and with love. I'm worthy of having a good place to live. I'm worthy of having a good vehicle. I'm worthy of having something good for my lunch today. I'm worthy of having all of those things. I need to know that. I need to treat myself well. And so the way you treat a friend that you really care about is how we should be treating ourselves. Would I do that to my friend? And if I wouldn't do it to my friend, then I'm certainly not going to do it myself. So, this is where positive self-talk comes in. We need to be talking to ourselves in a good, positive way. And I know growing up, I've always heard not to toot your own tutor, right? Let somebody else say nice things about you. You shouldn't be saying nice things about yourself. Well, look, if you're walking around and just telling everybody that you meet how good looking you are and how fantastic you are and how wonderful you are and how confident, pretty soon you're not going to have any friends. You get tired of all of that stuff. So you don't have to do that to other people. The one that it's important for you to do that to is you. You need to be talking to you. I am a good mom. I am a good dad. I am a good son or daughter. I'm a fantastic employee. I'm the best that's ever been at being whatever it is that I need to improve in my life. And before you know it, as I say these things, I'm going to get better and better and better. I may not wind up being the best it's ever been, but I'm going to be better than I am now. What's the Army say? Be all you can be. Be all you can be. That doesn't mean that I'm going to have to be better than Mr. Grace, or it doesn't mean that I'm going to even have to be as good as Mr. Grace. He's going to be the best Mr. Grace he can be. I'm going to be the best Mr. Garner, Dr. Garner, or Herschel that I can be. And that's important, being the best. There's somebody walking up to the door over there. So I'll go ahead and let him off in here. Oh no, he saw, it's all right. See, when he saw the signs that he needed. Say it again? No, this is not AA. This is a treatment facility. Oh well, y'all look like it. You look like an AA. So look, we're going to take our break because we're almost late. Let's come back about 20 minutes after, and we'll get started. Yes. Yeah, what is that? What is it?
You mean, what's the name of that thing?
I don't know. It looked kind of like a Toyota.
Gotta have a name.
No. It's a Ford. See that thing on the back? It's a Ford.
They don't tell you on the bottom of it.
Will it?
Oh,
Yeah, what kind of vehicle it is?
Ford.
Let me see.
Suburban. Subaru.
Ford? No, not a Ford. This is a Subaru Forester. It's a Subaru. You know, Subarus are made with love. That's what they say.
You never had no Hot Wheels?
Last year or this year.
I have.
I think they've always said that on the bottom. Not true though. Yes, and sometimes yeah, we got two more minutes. I'm not making three bags. I know it can't be hard. Put three bags in it, fill it up with water. It's
issue. All righty then. Where is it?
that's not now.
Sorry, I was in therapy.
Find yourself in there. All righty then. We're missing a few people.
And then you walk back in.
Makes me angry. Come on, Evan. Missing a few folks. But we've got a couple of more of these to go. We don't have a whole lot, but look, at whatever point we make it, then we'll be done, and we might get out of group a little earlier. Would that be all right? Usually we have someone coming at 11 o'clock to do group, and I tell them we're going to take about a 10-minute break. When they get here. So perhaps if we get through with our stuff early, we can take that break a little bit before that. One of the things one of the types of anger that we haven't looked at yet is silent anger. What do you think that might be?
It's not passive.
Say it again.
Not passive.
Say it again.
It's not passive aggressive.
No, it's a little bit different. It's silent anger, and sometimes this one is pretty prevalent. Silent anger is a non-verbal. You see, a lot of times passive aggressive stuff can be verbal. Internal way of experiencing anger. Although you may not verbally express it, it's possible for others to read that we're angry. People can see it on our faces and stuff like that, but they're not. We're not being really verbal about it. Not saying anything. We're not letting people know that we're angry. But we, nevertheless, we are. People can see it. People know it. A lot of the time, we are purposely trying to hide it, but it's not very effective because we're going to know it. All right. Terrified. People who experience silent anger typically try to hold their anger inside, but that allows it to build up inside of them. I have learned that when I'm allowing something to make me angry, my first response is to do exactly that. Back up, breathe, and shut up. And I'll go somewhere and think about it a few minutes. But the second thing that I do is verbalize it. I'm going to come out here in the group, and I've done it a dozen times, probably more than that. But I'll come out to the group and say, hey, when you guys did that, I allowed that to make me angry. That was frustrating to me. But I don't come out angry. Come out normal. And I'm just verbal with what happened. And I'll be, back in, sometimes I go back to my office and I'll sit there and let me tell you something. Y'all don't tell my boss. Sometimes, when I'm frustrated or, my feelings are hurt or something like that, I'll go back there and play a game of solitaire. Yeah. So if y'all come back there and find me playing a game of solitaire, it might be because you're frustrated. But it helps to get me to that place, and we need to have a little something that we can use to help ourselves calm down and stuff like that. Stuff, the thing over there that Mr. Odell has. What's that called? Coping mechanism. That thing there is actually called a fidget. Yeah, it's a fidget popper, and that is, that helps us focus ourselves, engage more in group and stuff like that. If you're really scattered and stuff, you can get a fidget spinner, and it's really, really helpful. Having something like that to help us focus on what's really the important thing. The important thing is not that you hurt my feelings. The important thing is that I am in control of mine. The important thing is that I can deal with myself. I don't need somebody else dealing with me. So that's what this silent anger can usually also keep me in that place of higher intensity in my own self. The fight or flight syndrome is going on. And if it stays there forever and I don't get that out, then that's going to cause me some physical problems and it can cause me some mental problems. It can cause an onset of depression, anxiety, and cause physical ailments like heart attacks, strokes, all of these kinds of things because I'm just angry. So it's important for me to get that out. So I go to my office, I sit down, I play a game of solitary, I come back, and I tell the group. One of the hardest things for me is telling my wife. When she does something that, I'm allowing that to frustrate me, I'm allowing that to bother me, I'll do the same thing. I have a home office, I go in there and I have what's called a writing room. Because I write books and I'm in there writing. And so I can go and I can write for a few minutes and stuff like that. And that will bring me back down to that. And then I'll come in and into her sphere, and I'll let her know that, I let that bother me. Not you made me angry. Because that's a physical impossibility. But always about me. I let that bother me. I let that anger me. I let that frustrate me. So I just wanted you to know that when you do that, I usually allow that to frustrate. It's always got to come back to me. So silent anger, people who experience that try to keep those inside, allow them to build up. That leads to increased stress, leads to increased tension. And let me tell you this: that stress. We all have stress in our lives, but stress that is overpowering can kill you. So we don't want to have stress that's unnecessary in our life. It causes tension and behavior related to overwhelm anger. Means I get frustrated, I strike out, I quit my job. I was sitting in my director's office one time years ago at the prison. I was the assistant director, and he and I were sitting there. And he was a lovely individual, but he had this unfortunate habit of just being nasty to people. So he had called up this supervisor that we had that had an office way across the facility and just chewed her out. And she kept trying to tell him something, and he just kept chewing her out and chewing her out. And finally she said, "Are you in your office?" He said, "Oh, yes." She said, "You're going to be there a few minutes?" He said, "Yeah, I'll be here for a little while." She said, "Okay, I got something for you." And she hung up the phone. It took her about 15, 20 minutes to get over there. I assume she took that time to type up her resignation. Because she brought it over there to his office and said, "Here you go." And she laid it down in front of him. She's turning around and walking out the office. And the boss, completely dumbfounded. He didn't know. He was treating her badly. He didn't even realize it. And he said, You can't quit." What? What? She's already halfway down the hallway. She's gone. And so he lost that employee. But was it his fault?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. To some extent, he ran his head in her, and he should not have. But also, she received that in a really bad way. She should have been able to better deal with her own feelings, because if she had been better able to deal with her own feelings, that day she wouldn't have lost her job. She was a supervisor there, so she was doing pretty well, making pretty good money and had a pretty good position. And, he did the same thing to me. And one of the things he would always say, when the storms came in, he wanted me to come back to the prison and be out there. We had to have representation out there. And he was going to be there, so I wasn't planning on it. And I said, "Well, I'm going to go back home." And he said, "Well, you better come back." And I said, "Look, if I have the opportunity, I'll come back." "Well, you better. Okay, so I didn't come back. He was way mad at me when it was over with. But he had that. He was just a bit abusive, and he didn't know how to deal with that. So silent anger can be internal or external experience. Internally, this type of anger can build up. It's uncommunicated frustration. And you hear that? Uncommunicated. I need to communicate with you. And I've had some people get angry with me in the group, because I'll come back after that. It may not be that day. It may be the next day. But I will tell you frustrated me. Now, that may not help you at all, but that's for me, right? We don't need to be angry and not get it communicated. That's why my anger facility is called Sundown Anger Management. Because the Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And so we don't. And sometimes I will, but the next day I'm going to let you know that, hey, when you did this or when you did that, that kind of frustrated me. I got a little bit. I let myself get a little. That's why I was in my office for a few minutes. So I'm gonna communicate that, and let you know that if you personally do something that hurts my feelings, frustrates me, I may not say anything to you right then. But once I've gotten myself under control, I'll come and talk to you about that. We had a guy here in the group, and this was a year ago, maybe. I said something, and it just hit him the wrong way. He got up, he walked out of the group, he went to his room. Okay. After the group was over with later that day, it was about time for me to go home. He said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Yeah." So we walked down the hallway here. And, I thought he was taking me down there to offer me or something. But we went down the hallway here and made the way down there. And he said, "Look, Doc, I just want you to know when you said that brought up feelings from my childhood, and that hurt my feelings, and that made me." Huh? That was appropriate. That was healthy. That was a good thing to do. And I told him, I said, "Well, hey, I'm really sorry that hurts. I'm not sorry I said that because that's part of the treatment. That's part of my program. That's part of what I had to, say that day. That came came right from the book. So I'm not sorry I said it, but I'm sorry to think of that." And so when we left, our relationship was in good shape again. We weren't angry at one another or all of that kind of stuff. But it was that way because two men said, "Hey, this is what happened." So it's important. Now, that doesn't mean I go get in somebody's face and jump on them and, "You shouldn't." That's why I get myself under control before I try to go with somebody else. I'll go just tell them, I'm going to wait. When I go, my emotions are not going to be involved in it. It's just going to be a fact mission. Just giving you the facts. Well, that's it, So, silent anger can be dangerous. If your glasses on upside down here. It can cause uncommitted frustration, anger. It can cause resentment, causing undue stress and levels of ongoing tension. And those are the things we cannot have in our life. If we cannot relax, we can't get the stress out of there. We need to figure out why we can't get that stress out of our life. Do something different. Now look, sometimes it's hard. But if I'm working at a job and that job is so stressful that I'm stressed out all the time at that job, should I attempt to stay at that job? I'm going to do it just like my daddy taught me. My daddy didn't ever teach me a whole lot, but he taught me to before I quit a job, to have a job. Make sense? If this job is hugely stressful, everything you do is going to be a little stressful. But if this job is so stressful that every day I go home and I'm tensed up and everything is nasty and I'm having arguments with my spouse, all of this stuff, I'm treating my kids bad, I'm kicking the dog, all of this stuff because of the stress of the job, then I'm going to look around and see if there's something a little less stressful out there. And once I find that job, tell these folks, cause them a little stress. And, a little tension. But I'm not going to do it without it being okay. So, externally, that's internal stuff. But externally, that means on the outside, it can present as closed off body language. Why do we do this? What do we do? What is it?
Frustration.
Frustration?
Yeah, it's comfortable sometimes.
It is comfortable. Sometimes I'm standing like this, and it's pretty comfortable. I like having my arms, but a lot of the times too, it's a signal that I'm closing myself off. Whatever you're saying, I've had people come into my office and we're talking and they're relaxed, everything's going on, and you say, "But I need to talk about what you did yesterday. We need to talk about that." Immediately, and they close off. So that's what that means. In some instances, in here, some of us, that's not it. A lot of times, most of the time, I can stand like that. I catch myself in my boss's office or something doing this, and then I've got to stop. I'll put my arm behind me. That's how we stood in the military, with hands locked behind me. But to me, that's pretty comfortable. So I like that sometimes. When I'm by myself, I will do that. When I'm communicating with another person, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to see it as being closed off. I don't want them to see it as being closed off. So we can see it in that. We can see it in facial expressions. We can see it in restricted or minimal speech or tone. Now, is there anybody that you know that you can look at their face and know that they haven't, that they're a little bit angry?
Yeah.
I probably do that with anybody. That's why I tell Miss Casey not to ever try to play poker. I mean, she does not have a poker face. Talk to Casey, you can see the emotions working on her face. You just see that? You see them now? You can see the emotions working on her. If she doesn't like something I told her, I know it. I know right off, right away. It's not going to take me long to figure that out. So, the ways that we're going to deal with this, we're going to have silent anger is not inherently wrong, but it may be necessary for allowing ourselves to process some emotions safely. And sometimes I practice that. Sometimes I've had people in here disagree with me. I'm teaching something that the American Medical Association put out, or the American Psychological Association put out. None of the stuff. Now, I haven't written 7 books, of which y'all have not bought any, but none of them. I have 7 books out there. You hadn't bought any of them. But that's not what I teach out of. I teach out of what the APA says and all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes I'll have somebody that just is aggravating, that they're standing against all of that information, all of that stuff that comes from all of those knowledge-filled people. And sometimes, I just want to say, shut up. But instead of that, I just keep myself quiet. Let that stuff stay a little bit less anger, a little less verbal. I'm not going to say much about it. But after a while, it needs to come out. It helps me to process certain emotions safely, but there are risks associated with shutting other people out. If they resonate with silent anger, it may be helpful to practice simply expressing themselves safely. See that? So silently, I'm angry because she just came and disrupted the whole group. We'll get over it. It's important for us to create clear boundaries. This is how we're going to deal with it. On how you want to convey your anger. If I'm going to convey my anger, then I'm going to do it personally. I'm going to do it one-on-one. Now, if it's the group that I need to talk to, then I'm going to do it to the group, because that's just normal. That's what should be done. All right. Real quickly. The next one we're going to look at, we've only got a couple more. We're going to go through it pretty quickly. Verbal anger. So the one we did before this was silent anger. The next one is verbal anger. Verbal anger is an aggressive type of anger. I have a lot of people who exercise verbal anger. It is the aggressive one, and it can become abusive. Those who experience this type of anger are noted to feel remorseful after they've lashed out at other people, at the target of, and a lot of the time they'll be terribly apologizing. I'm so sorry I said that. I didn't mean to say that. All of that stuff. All of that's a bunch of malarkey, because when we get to that place where we're angry, we're going to say it, whatever we want to say. But to go back to that person and say, look, I said this to you, but I didn't mean to. I was out of character. That's not true. Our true character is going to come out. When I get angry, I go sit down by myself a little bit and build myself back. I can deal with myself. If I cannot do that, if I'm verbally going to attack people that's around me, that's my character. That's who I am. So I need to watch that. Verbal anger, that doesn't mean that can't change. Don't get a hold of that and say, well, if that's who I am, that's just who I am. That's not true. That can change. So verbal anger can present itself by lashing out, going off on somebody verbally. It's not acceptable, ma'am. It's not acceptable. You can't do that. Don't be yelling at me. We're not going to do that. And don't be yelling at other people. I want to tell you this. If you don't realize it by now, people don't like that. And when you verbalize very loudly and stuff like that to objections or whatever somebody's doing, that's going to cause them to respond in anger a lot of the time. So we have to be cautious about that. So specific behaviors can include shouting, threatening behaviors, sarcastic comments. Been accused of that a couple of times. Just out. Continuous, intense criticism, ridicule. We need to keep in mind that verbal anger can transition into verbal abuse and also keep you from being able to maintain stable, healthy relationships. We're married for 53 years. Do you think that in that 53 years my wife may have yelled at me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. You think in that 53 years I may have yelled at her?
Yes.
No.
No.
No. It might have happened once or twice, but it's important for us to have the clear boundaries on how we're going to convey that anger. We need to accept that it's not okay. Y'all need to hear this. It's not okay to criticize other people or shout at them. Okay. Look, it's not okay to criticize other people. It's okay to criticize some behavior. There's a huge difference. And look what you did, and look what happened. Okay? If I'm saying, look what you did, then I am criticizing that individual person personally. If I'm saying, look what happened, then I'm criticizing the event or what they did, and we can get that changed. No, it's a whole lot different. So we need to do. So if we struggle with patterns, we need to identify the reason that they want somebody else to change. We want to change ourselves. That's a lot of the time what we use, verbal anger. We don't realize where it's going to go. So we need to lead. We need to get in the habit of just taking a break. That's what this came from. Back up, breathe, and be quiet. We need to take a minute for ourselves. Take a minute for ourselves. Look, I'm going to tell you this, and you all know this. We've all had the capacity to get angry. We've all gotten angry. We've all done goofy stuff when we were angry. And usually, other than the fact that we get a power feeling from it, usually the results are not good. Usually they are not in our benefit. So we need to get into the habit of pausing when we feel that verbal anger coming on. I need to tell you something. We talked about this the other day, and I think it's one of the greatest things that was ever came out of psychology, which is where it came out of. I need to know if it needs to be said. Does this really need to be said? And if I make the decision, absolutely, this needs to be said. Then the second thing is I need to understand, does it need to be said right now? 99.90% of the time, it does not need to be said at this moment. Why is that? I'm in my emotions right now. I'm in my emotions. I know I need to tell that person that they stink. They have a body odor. I need to tell that person they need to take a stinking shower. Right? But does it need to be said right now? No, because I'm in my emotions. maybe later on, I might be able to tell that. The third thing is probably the most important is does it need to be said by me? Look, here's the deal. If somebody's going to talk to that person and get that line down, and somebody else can do that, which is more effective than me, then perhaps that person needs to say that. So those three things, does it need to be said? Does it really need to be said? Sometimes it doesn't need to be said. Sometimes it just doesn't need to be said. I had a guy at the prison, really nice guy, really. We bonded pretty quickly, really nice. In prison for murder, killed a guy, shot him 7 times. Yeah, he was making sure he was dead. But he was sitting across from him, and the guy was mean mugging. I have people mean mug me in here all the time. This guy was mean mugging him. Y'all know what that is, right?
Yeah.
That's looking angry. Yeah, giving him that crazy look. And so, because the guy was mean mugging him and that kind of stuff, he goes over to ask what the heck the problem is. And when he did, the other guy started some junk. And before it was over with, he shot him, and then he went and over him, shot him in the head a whole bunch of times, killed him dead, didn't get off of the parking lot before he's arrested. The rest of his stinking life is destroyed because some guy's looking at me evil. So sometimes it don't need to be said, okay, just that guy's dumb enough to look at me evil anyway. I mean, here's the thing I learned a long time ago. Whatever you think of me, that ain't my business. That's your business. Think whatever you want to. You don't bother me at all. You can think I'm stupid, okay. You can think I'm ugly, okay. On both counts, we all know you're wrong. All right? So it doesn't matter. The same thing goes the other way. If I don't like you, if I think nasty stuff about you, that's my business. That ain't your business. You don't have any right to come in and say, well, why do you think that? That's not your business. So if you're looking at me and we never know, that person could be looking at us and thinking, man, he's got it going on. I wish I had what he has. I wish I could do what he's doing. I wish I had that kind of talent, and just get that mean look. Yeah, could be that. Could be that. But now we're going to go and force the confrontation. If that's your goal in life is to do that, well, somebody will end it.
Some people have a resting people.
Some people do. Some people just look that way. They do. Yeah. So look, I'm going to tell you, there was a time in my life that kind of stuff bothered me really badly. And, I grew up with a small man complex. If you were bigger than me, we're going to fight. And I'm going to tell you, people have that. That doesn't always mean. I got my butt whipped a lot. And it took me a while to get to the place where, okay, I'm not the biggest guy in the room, and that's all right. That's okay, so they're kind of freakishly big. Okay, no, I'm not going to say, Mr. Allen. No, it's tall. Freakishly big. Nah. So, anyway, we need to regroup. We need to allow ourselves to reconvene. When you get yourself regulated. Emotional regulation. Work on emotional regulation. We need to be able to regulate our emotions, because when my emotions get over my intellect, I'll do whatever I want to do, which means I'll drink sugar, I'll shoot you, I'll beat you, I'll do whatever I want to do. So my intellect needs to be in charge all the time. And lastly, I'm going to bring you something different tomorrow, but lastly is volatile anger. Does that sound like a bad one? Yes. Volatile. Volatile anger is the explosive type of anger that is sometimes called sudden anger. Have we had anybody in here that suffered from volatile anger?
randomly getting angry? Or is
Say it
something
again?
wrong with it? Is it just randomly getting angry? Or is something
Yeah,
wrong?
we have usually they have a good excuse, but the excuse is just that, it's a good excuse. Sometimes we find a good excuse for bad behavior. He looked at me bad.
I blood sugar.
Yeah. So, well, you're so it can happen when someone experiences an annoyance. It's either big, it's small, explodes verbally, sometimes they explode physically, potentially becoming disruptive, destructive. This type of anger makes it difficult for the individual to express themselves, process, communicate, do anything. Volatile anger can look at a rapid progression from status quo, which means normal, to outrage over real or even perceived threats, slights, just no big deal. So, it's frequently destructive, can include shouting, yelling, throwing things, and physical aggression. Now, let me share this with you. Ladies, gentlemen, it's not okay. It's not okay. You might feel really good. You might feel really powerful after that. It's not okay for us to be shouting, yelling, throwing things, and having physical aggression toward people. It's not okay. A lot of the time, if that's going on, and force those people to defend them. Right? If you're doing this toward me, I'm going to defend myself. I just am. And most people will. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want other people to be afraid of us. The most dangerous person on the face of the earth is who?
What?
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 God.
God. The most dangerous person we are likely to run into is someone who's afraid of you. Not if you're big and chesting and big chesting people and all that, you get some little guy scared of you, he'll do what's necessary to deal with you.
Right. Has anybody seen back kid to a corner?
Yes. Yeah. You back somebody into a corner and they're scared to death and all of that stuff, you're going to get shooting, knifing, gunning, whatever it is to get you off of it. And, and that goes for ladies as well. So, we don't want to go around trying to make people afraid of them. I'm not trying to intimidate anybody. Let everybody look. I'm 72 years old. If somebody jumps on me, I've got to fight. I ain't got enough oomph in me to run that fast anymore. So, yeah. So I'm going to do what I can. So y'all saw that fellow that was with me. That's Mr. J. He's the guy that knows all about maintenance stuff. He's out there with that air conditioner, so it may be working. Volatile anger can be really tight. This anger may keep us into having any kind of good relationships or anything like that. It's tricky because it often feels so sudden and intense, but we need to know it did go through the same process as all the rest of those anger things. We need to get into the habit of regularly identifying our anger, regularly identifying our emotions. What emotion am I in right now? And when I feel myself beginning to change, my mood to change, I'm becoming frustrated, I'm becoming angry, then I need to be able to know that that's happening so that I can do something. We need to pay attention to how my body feels before I react to it. That's frustrating me. So if it's frustrating me, a lot of the time, it's when we break our relationship. You gotta get it. Okay. Have you ever seen anybody in here that was really, really frustrated? Yeah. Some of the folks in here have really, really frustrating. And, and after a while, they move through, and this too shall pass. All of that stuff works. So, questions, comments?
Self-frustration causes stress.
It does. Yeah. All right, gentlemen. I appreciate y'all. You did well. Some of you cannot stay in groups, but that's frustrating. But I'm not going to let it get me angry. Ladies, I'll be over there in a little bit after a while to pick up.